If you're a fan of bold and expressive art, come check out my Patreon. For just $1, you'll get exclusive access to artwork that I don't share anywhere else. Click the link in the video description to dive into my daring creations and unique artistic style. Fighting continues to rage in Sweida, Syria, despite a government-ordered ceasefire. The conflict, which began last Sunday and has already claimed over 900 lives, pits Bedouin fighters and their allies against Druze forces. This escalation follows a week of intense clashes in the predominantly Druze region, sparked by the army's withdrawal amidst Israeli bombardment and diplomatic pressure. The Syrian Presidency declared an immediate and comprehensive ceasefire and deployed internal security forces, aiming to quell the violence and protect civilians. President Ahmed al-Shara, in a televised address, blamed armed groups from Sweida for reigniting the conflict, alleging retaliatory attacks against Bedouins and their families. He also cited Israeli intervention as a catalyst for the crisis, stating it pushed the country into a dangerous phase. The presidency warned that any ceasefire breaches would be a violation of sovereignty, urging all parties to cease hostilities immediately. Sheikh Hikmat al-Hijri, a prominent Druze religious leader, stated that the ceasefire would guarantee safe passage for community members and the opening of humanitarian corridors. However, reports from AFP correspondents indicate ongoing clashes in the west of Sweida's capital, with Druze fighters confronting armed Bedouins and their allies, described by Druze fighters as largely Islamists. A Bedouin tribesman, identifying himself as Abu Jassim, chillingly vowed to slaughter them, the Druze, in their homes. Adding to the complexity, U.S. Special Envoy Thomas Barak announced a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Syria, brokered with the support of Turkey and Jordan. This agreement, he stated, aimed to unite Druze, Bedouins, and Sunnis in building a peaceful and prosperous Syria. President al-Shara echoed this sentiment, reaffirming his commitment to protecting Syria's ethnic and religious minorities and praising the U.S.'s role in supporting Syria's stability. The EU welcomed the agreement, expressing horror at the recent sectarian violence. Israel, however, expressed skepticism regarding al-Shara's commitment, citing past violence against minorities. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar warned of the dangers faced by minorities in al-Shara's Syria. The UN also called for an end to the fighting and an independent investigation into the violence, which, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, SOHR, has resulted in at least 940 fatalities. The SOHR detailed the dire humanitarian situation in Sweida, reporting widespread shortages of food and medical supplies, non-functional hospitals, and rampant looting. A surgeon at Sweida National Hospital described a catastrophic situation, with decaying corpses piling up, including women and children. The renewed fighting has raised serious questions about al-Shara's authority, particularly in light of the killing of 1,500 mostly Alawite civilians on the Syrian coast in March. Al-Shara's decision to withdraw government forces from Sweida, following mediation efforts, has been questioned. Sources suggest that the Syrian government misjudged Israel's response to the deployment of troops, believing they had a green light from the US and Israel, despite prior warnings. The violence initially erupted after the kidnapping of a Druze vegetable merchant by local Bedouin, escalating into a cycle of tit-for-tat abductions. Government troops, according to witnesses and the SOHR, sided with the Bedouin, resulting in alleged abuses against Druze civilians and fighters. The SOHR reported 19 civilians were killed in a massacre when Syrian forces entered Sawa al-Balada. A truce was negotiated, allowing Druze factions to maintain security as government forces withdrew. Al-Shara justified the withdrawal as a means to avoid a larger-scale war. However, clashes resumed, with Syrian state media reporting Druze revenge attacks on Bedouin villages. Heavy fighting, involving machine guns and shelling, erupted, severely damaging Sweida and cutting off essential services like water, electricity, and communication. Ryan Maroof, editor-in-chief of Sweida 24, described the humanitarian situation as catastrophic, highlighting the lack of even basic necessities like milk for children. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, demanded independent investigations and accountability for the violations. The International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, highlighted the overwhelmed health facilities, dwindling supplies, and power cuts hindering the preservation of remains in overflowing morgues. Stefan Sakalian, head of the ICRC's delegation in Syria, described the humanitarian situation as critical. Concerns have been raised regarding the token representation of Syria's minority groups in the interim government, leading to fears that the incursion into Sweida signals the new authorities' intent to use military force to control all parts of Syria. Government supporters fear that ceding security control to the Druze might embolden other minorities to demand autonomous regions, potentially fragmenting the country. The conflict's origins trace back to the kidnapping of a Druze vegetable merchant, escalating into a brutal conflict that continues to claim lives and devastate the region, leaving behind a legacy of devastation and uncertainty. The situation in Sweida remains extremely volatile, and the international community watches with growing concern.